Next up, we have a panel discussion, and the topic of the discussion is how to realize a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment. And to talk to us today, we have Patricia Jameson. She's the Director of Diversity and Equity Programs at UMCG Europe. We have Marilise de Villiers, founder and CEO of ROAR Coaching and Consulting, and also member of the Board of Advisors. We have Kate Watts, Exec Director of Advancing Women in Technology, and we have Martha Diaz, founder Hip Hop CU and curator, Universal Hip Hop Museum. Wow, what a panel. I am so excited to be talking to all of you today. Welcome. First up, maybe we'll start with just a one-line introduction of yourselves, if you want to say something more. So maybe we'll start with you, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. Well, my name is Patricia Jameson. As mentioned earlier, I'm calling in from Saarbrücken, Germany. And I've been in the DEI field for about 20 years, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilise?
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be back this year. It's amazing. I say congratulations. I just want to say today I want to celebrate every single woman on this planet, and I also want you to celebrate you. So my whole brand is about empowering women, and it's about finding your roar. So it's very much about, living in your purpose, in your power, and with the courage to speak your truth. So I really want to challenge you all to think about, what are you doing today to celebrate you?
Awesome. Yes, 100%. It's all about authenticity and celebrating yourself this year. Kate.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Watts, and I'm the Executive Director of AWIT, where we work to help women advance their careers in technology. And I'm calling in today from Nashville, Tennessee, in the United States, and I'm thrilled to be with you.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everyone. To start off our panel, the first question I have is something that is probably something you're working on and thinking about every day: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sorry. In your own words, could you describe what DE&I means to you, what it is not, when it comes to your jobs? So, Patricia, maybe we'll start with you again.
Okay, thank you. Diversity is very complex. It's a beautiful thing. It encompasses all the ways that we are different, right? It consists of several dimensions, including visible and invisible characteristics. Diversity is not just about the visible diversity. That's very key. Oftentimes when I talk with people, they see diversity in terms of race, gender, etc. Diversity is a lot more than that. It also includes external dimensions, which is fluid and can change over time. That's marital status, parental status, work experience. And there's also organizational dimensions, right? Which includes job classification, management status, work location. Diversity is not about a particular demographic. That's very important for us to remember. And diversity includes everyone. And it's not a new concept. It always existed. We've just been talking more about diversity. Then we have equity, which refers to being fair and impartial in terms of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement. Equity in terms of organization includes having access to resources and the access not being dependent on which group we belong to, right? Then we also have inclusion. Inclusion pretty much means the process of putting diversity into action, right? Where diverse ideas, backgrounds, and perspectives are leveraged to create value. It's what an organization does, the action it takes. So I see diversity as being, right, and inclusion as the action behind. And diversity, equity, and inclusion all matter together. And inclusion in organizations exist when differences are valued, different ideas and perspectives are considered in decision-making, and the workforce feels a sense of belonging and community. And there's also what's called the inclusive leadership framework, right? That's also become a more popular leadership style today's century. And that's where leaders treat people and groups fairly, personalizes individuals, and recognizes the unique contributions right, we give and leverages diversity of thought. And DEI is a process that works together. One alone, diversity alone, does not create that competitive advantage we talk about. Equity alone doesn't either. It has to work together, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That was great. Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Marilise.
How do I add anything to that? That's the most comprehensive answer I've ever heard. That's incredible. Thank you, Patricia. I think I just want to sort of pick up on it's that sort of I think from an organizational perspective and a cultural perspective, it's really that environment that the organization and its leaders create to make people feel welcome. And you mentioned belonging, Patricia. I love that because it's that sense of belonging. Regardless of who I am, where I come from, you know, I feel like I belong here. That I'm actually I have permission to show up as my whole self. I think that's really, really important because it's not just about the organization giving you permission to be your whole self, but it's also about you giving yourself permission to show up as your whole self. And I think that's where I think the balance becomes beautiful. It's like a beautiful dance because as much as it is the leader and the organization's responsibility to create that safe space and that psychological safety, it's as much your responsibility to also give yourself permission to really show up fully as you.
Amazing. Kate.
Wow, what two women to follow. I'll just add that when I think about building cultures of belonging and working towards diversity, equity, and inclusion, that equity is individualized and it is giving people the opportunity to take the resources that they need as individuals to get to the level of success or opportunity or the belonging that they seek. So you cannot be dropping everybody across the table with the same treatment, but rather need to think of everyone as an individual and have that human to human, what do you need to belong here? And so it's a conversation, it's a moving target, and it's something to continue to focus on.
Amazing. Well, that was between the three of you, each of you hit all the amazing aspects. That was very enlightening. Thank you. We now have moved into this whole remote environment and we have a remote workforce right now. So how has this changed as an evolving factor into the DE&I programs in your experience? So Kate, would you continue conversation?
Of course. And I feel like following after Sarah's introduction, there's a lot of different areas that we can take this. And the revolving remote workforce has so many shades of gray when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in some ways, I think about individuals who I speak with who perhaps come from underrepresented backgrounds and have said that they've actually really enjoyed being remote exclusively, as they felt like they are no longer having to hear specific microaggressions or comments that are inappropriate on a daily basis, especially as the world has been in rather tumultuous times. So there's been some protection of some individuals' mental health, being able to be in remote spaces. But then I also think conversely about how the organization that I work for works to advance the careers of women. And if you're thinking about those in entry-level roles who are trying to think of how do I go about advancing in a new position or getting sponsorship, connections within an organization, and I'm coming in a remote only organization, how do we make sure that we set up individuals to succeed and make the connections that they're needing to be able to learn, advance, and upskill into new positions and feel like they do in fact belong? So there's so many different directions that we can take this work in, and it requires such concentration and intentionality on behalf of both leaders and team members to make sure that the individuals at an organization can navigate successfully in the way that they want to.
Absolutely, so true. Kate, thank you so much for that. Marilise, would you like to add?
I think it's always been there. So I think all that sort of shifted is that, well, this is certainly what I feel and what I've experienced is that organizations that were doing a good job with DE&I got momentum because it really showed that, you know, we are taking the wellness of our people seriously, and we're having, I love what you said, Kate, about it's a conversation, and it's a unique conversation based on the individual. So there's no one size that fits all. So organizations that were already doing a great job got momentum, and I think they just really were able to accelerate their initiatives and their efforts. Whereas I think the organizations that didn't pay attention was suddenly in big trouble, and it sort of put a spotlight on the challenges that these organizations were facing, you know. And I think there's it sort of revealed a lot of sort of toxic behavior, because when people go through uncertainty, you kind of show your true colors, you know, when you're under pressure, when there's uncertainty, and suddenly the whole world was in turmoil. So you kind of show your true colors. And I think I think on a whole, it's a good thing. It's an amazing thing what happened, because it sort of cracked the issue open. But I just think, you know, the companies that have momentum are just carrying on and building on that. And I'm seeing some really amazing progress. It's slow. It's still too slow. I'd love it to be faster. But at least I'm seeing lots of positive progress, which is encouraging.
That's very hopeful. That's so true. Yeah. Patricia, in your experience, what are some of the most recent research and findings in the D&I space? For example, there's been more work on unconscious bias in the workplace as an example. So what have you seen more recently coming up in terms of research and findings? That could be interesting for us.
Sure. In terms of research and findings, definitely, you know, organizations are acknowledging that bias training is important, that it's needed. We all have our biases. It's not necessarily good or bad, right? It exists. It's what makes us human. However, training is very important to incorporate into the work we do in any of our D&I training. So there is more support and more data showing the positive impact this kind of training offers an organization. What organizations are also realizing is that they need to make this training more interactive and meaningful for people. Sometimes when you hear unconscious bias training, that can be very threatening, right, to people. So what are we doing to make this training meaningful and engaging? And research has also shown that offering opportunities for reflection and action is key to training on bias. We need to provide that psychological safe space, which is also a topic that is coming up more often in research. What are we doing to create that psychological safe space where people can have conversations about bias, do some self-reflection, and obtain feedback? And I like this quote by Ho La, a founding member of a special group in coaching psychology. He says, without reflection, people would not learn from their experience. And Aristotle says, for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. And for instance, that is the direction, for instance, research shows that we're more effective in training, is providing people the opportunity to learn from their experience, a psychological safe space being key, and asking people questions like, what will you do differently now? Creating action plans, deliverables. So that is a direction, you know, many of us are heading organizations involving in D&I training, and research shows the value of active learning and training sessions and time for reflection as being very key.
Thank you, Patricia. Just to wrap up our session today, and on a positive note, what are you most hopeful for when it comes to D&I? Kate?
Oh, wow. What a big question. And I too am a pragmatic optimist, and I love that there is so much attention and focus that is happening in DE&I right now. And so many folks are asking, how can I work to make a culture of belonging and Patricia, I love how you framed that. Now that the question of, now that you know something, what are you going to do to change things? What will you do differently? And I believe there's been such a rising of awareness globally on the importance of these issues. And as we can continue to focus on this work and the importance of this, I believe that many people are asking themselves, now that I know, how can I do better? And are taking that reflection into action.
So great. Marilise?
So I dream of a world where we don't have to have this conversation anymore, you know, where when there is a woman that rises to the top and becomes a CISO, that we don't call out the fact that she's female. You know, if, you know, you walk into a boardroom, there's 50% women, 50% men in the room, and you immediately get that diversity of thought and, you know, solve complex problems. So I just dream of that sort of world where it's a non-conversation, and where we can just all be equal.
That sounds amazing. Can't wait. Patricia, any last words?
Yeah, I just want to add to, you know, we made a lot of progress, and I think it's a wonderful thing. We're finally now part of the conversation, right? And so my hope is that conversation continues to continue that dialogue and embedding DE&I in everything we do. And I see lots of opportunities to do that. And today, this observance is part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all. That was really, really enlightening. Thank you so much for your time.